Have you ever met a man who talks like he's got life all figured out, but deep down, you know he's stuck? He repeats the same old lines, dismisses growth, shrinks from responsibility, and worst of all, he thinks he's being strong when really, he's just being stagnant. The truth is, most men don't fail because of what they lack. They fail because of what they repeat. Words become habits. Habits become identity. And before you know it, your mouth is the loudest evidence that you've stopped evolving. In this video, we're breaking down 6 phrases that signal a man has stopped growing, and contrasting them with the quiet, powerful alternatives taught by Stoic philosophy. If you want to stop being ruled by pride and start being guided by principle, then listen closely. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more Stoic insights, and let's dive in. Because what you say isn't just communication, it's a mirror of your mind, and it's time to clean it.
Number 1.
That's just how I am. There's a quiet tragedy buried in this phrase. On the surface, it sounds like self-awareness, like a man who knows who he is and stands firm in it. But if you listen closely, not just to the words, but to the energy behind them, you'll hear something different. You'll hear resignation dressed up as confidence. You'll hear fear hiding behind a wall of pride. Because when a man says, "That's just how I am," he's not owning his truth, he's avoiding his growth. The Stoics taught that our nature isn't carved in stone. It is written daily through our choices, sharpened by discipline, and revealed in how we respond to life. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." But a man who clings to a fixed identity is doing the opposite. He is explaining himself constantly, not to grow, but to justify standing still. "That's just how I am" becomes a shield he hides behind whenever life demands more of him. The truth is, real self-knowledge isn't a static statement. It's a dynamic process of refinement, and only the courageous keep moving forward. Let's be brutally honest. Growth is hard, it's uncomfortable. It forces you to confront your blind spots, your contradictions, your excuses. And this phrase, it's a shortcut away from all that. A way to say, "I'm done trying," without admitting it, a way to protect ego over evolution. But Marcus Aurelius, who ruled over the most powerful empire of his time, wrote daily reminders to himself not to fall into that trap. "Be tolerant with others," he said, "and strict with yourself." That is the Stoic way. Not rigidity, but refinement. Not perfection, but progress. He could have easily told himself he had no more to learn, but instead he journaled as a student of life. That's a man who refused to settle. When you say, "That's just how I am," what are you really saying? Are you protecting your peace, or are you protecting your comfort zone? Seneca warned us, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. There is no finish line. There is no final form. And the moment you believe you've arrived, you've already started to decline, because identity, when used to resist change, becomes a prison disguised as a personality. The cost of protecting your old self is the loss of your future self. We see this play out in everyday moments. A man gets angry too quickly and says, "That's just how I am. I have a temper." But anger is not identity. It's a signal, a habit, a choice. And every time he excuses it, he reinforces it. Or take someone who avoids connection and says, "I'm just not an emotional person." No, you've just trained yourself to fear vulnerability, to confuse numbness with strength. The Stoic doesn't deny his emotions. He studies them, observes them, masters them. Emotional discipline isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of control. Here's the painful truth. Every time you defend a trait that limits you, you delay your own liberation. The wise man doesn't protect his limitations. He breaks them down, not in loud, dramatic gestures, but in silent, daily effort. Like a sculptor, he chips away at what no longer belongs. And yes, that requires humility. Yes, it requires courage. But above all, it requires the willingness to stop hiding behind statements like, "That's just how I am." Instead, replace it with something honest, something aligned with the Stoic path. Say, "I am a work in progress." Say it not to excuse your flaws, but to take ownership of your direction. Say it because the man who knows he's unfinished is the only one who keeps getting better. Say it because the real strength is not in defending what you've always been. It's in refining who you choose to become. Growth doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It asks you to stop defending the version of you that's settled, because identity is not a fixed state. It is a living process, one you shape moment by moment through what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you choose to rise above. And every time you revise that story with honesty and courage, you're not betraying yourself. You're reclaiming yourself. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "That's just how I am," pause, breathe, and ask instead, "Who am I becoming?" Then move, however slowly, toward the answer.
Number 2.
Real men don't talk about feelings. This is one of the most destructive lies a man can tell himself. It sounds tough, hardened, unshakable. But if you sit with it long enough, you'll realize it isn't strength, it's fear. When someone says, "Real men don't talk about feelings," what they're really saying is, "I don't know how to sit with what hurts." They're not drawing a boundary, they're building a wall. And behind that wall is a man who's afraid to face himself. The Stoics understood emotion not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a force to be understood. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man of his time, wrote honestly about exhaustion, grief, loss, and anger. He didn't avoid these emotions, he studied them. He looked them in the eye and asked, "What are you here to teach me?" That's what strength looks like. Not suppression, but self-examination. The man who fears his emotions hasn't mastered them. He simply ignored them long enough to become unfamiliar with their message. There is a critical difference between emotional control and emotional denial. Denial is brittle, it cracks under pressure, but control, that's flexible. It bends without breaking. The Stoic doesn't repress how he feels. He refuses to be ruled by how he feels, Epictetus taught. When something happens, the only thing in your power is your response. But you can't respond to something you refuse to acknowledge. If you don't talk about your feelings, you don't govern them. They govern you from the shadows. And here's the tragedy. A man who never learns to speak the language of emotion becomes emotionally illiterate. He starts to mistake anger for strength, silence for peace, numbness for resilience. But these are not virtues, they are symptoms. Symptoms of unresolved pain that's been shoved underground for too long. And eventually what lives in the dark begins to control you in the light. What you refuse to feel, you end up acting out. Fred Rogers, yes, the quiet, gentle man in the cardigan, was one of the most stoic men of the modern age. He said, "What's mentionable is manageable." That's Stoicism distilled into a single sentence. If you can name it, you can face it. If you can face it, you can choose your response. But when men bottle up their emotions, they turn into strangers to themselves. They no longer understand their own inner world. And when that happens, how can they possibly bring peace to others? Let's go deeper. What happens when a man suppresses his emotions for years? He starts snapping at people he loves. He withdraws from real connection. He escapes into addictions, alcohol, work, scrolling, anything to distract from the ache inside. And when he's asked how he's doing, he shrugs. Fine. But he's not fine. He's just silent. And silence in this case is a slow erosion of the soul. Even worse, it becomes inherited. Boys raised by emotionally distant fathers grow into men who repeat the same patterns, never questioning them, only passing them on. The Stoic man does not confuse detachment with discipline. He learns to sit in discomfort without needing to run from it. He listens inwardly. He lets his feelings rise. And then, instead of reacting, he responds, not loudly, not emotionally, but with awareness and intention. That's power. That's poise. That's what makes him reliable under pressure. Not because he feels nothing, but because he understands what he feels and governs it from stillness. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And much of that imagined suffering is magnified by silence. The longer you hide your emotions, the more monstrous they seem. But when you speak them, calmly, clearly, and without shame, they lose their power to control you. Talking about your feelings doesn't make you soft. It makes you sovereign. It puts you back in the driver's seat. So the next time you hear that old phrase, "Real men don't talk about feelings," pause, ask yourself, is that belief helping you become a better man? Or is it keeping you stuck in a pattern of emotional avoidance? Because true strength isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of composure through emotion. That's what the Stoics practiced every day. A real man speaks honestly, not to seek sympathy, but to maintain clarity. He doesn't hide from his inner storms. He becomes the calm within them. That is what makes him unshakable.
Number 3.
It's not my fault. At first, this phrase might sound reasonable, even logical. After all, sometimes things aren't your fault. Life throws curveballs, people betray us, systems fail. But when a man repeats the words, "It's not my fault," too often, something deeper is happening. He's not describing reality. He's outsourcing his power. He's training his mind to see himself as a victim in every story. And that is a dangerous mindset, because once you stop taking responsibility, you also stop shaping your future. The Stoics taught that while we cannot control what happens, we can always control how we interpret and respond to it. Epictetus was born into slavery. He had every reason to say, "It's not my fault," and he would have been right. But he chose a different path. He chose to focus on what he could control: his character, his discipline, and his philosophy. "Seek not for events to happen as you wish," he said, "but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." That is not passive surrender. It is the deepest form of empowerment. It says, even if the situation is not your fault, the next move is still yours. Here's where the damage begins. The more a man says, "It's not my fault," the more he waits for apologies, waits for others to fix the damage, waits for the world to treat him differently. But while he waits, his life stagnates. You see, blame may relieve you from guilt, but it also robs you of initiative. It makes you feel momentarily righteous, but leaves you powerless in the long run. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the known world, had no shortage of people he could blame. Senators betrayed him, plagues ravaged his empire. Yet he wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." That wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. He knew that complaint is a form of delay, and delay is the enemy of inner peace. When you say, "It's not my fault," you're waiting for the world to return to order. But the Stoic doesn't wait. He creates order within first. Let's say you're betrayed by a friend. You didn't deserve it, you didn't see it coming, but now you have two choices: relive it, replay it, retell it, or reclaim yourself. The Stoic chooses the latter. He doesn't need to deny the pain, but he also refuses to hand over the steering wheel to it. Because the moment you say, "It's mine to deal with," something shifts. You stop drowning, you start building. And make no mistake, the feeling of blame is addictive. It gives you something to hold on to when things fall apart. But it's a bitter fuel. It burns fast and leaves you empty. Responsibility, on the other hand, is slow-burning strength. It doesn't taste as sweet, but it nourishes your soul. The man who says, Maybe it wasn't my fault, but it's my responsibility, is the man who cannot be broken, because he never surrenders his ability to act. Seneca once said, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." If you expect the world to treat you fairly, you will collapse when it doesn't. But if you expect hardship and train your mind to respond, not react, then you remain grounded no matter the storm. Saying "it's not my fault" may be factually true, but if it becomes your emotional reflex, you will live in reaction instead of creation. You will wait for justice instead of building peace. And the most dangerous part? This mindset spreads. If you live by blame, you teach others to do the same. Your children watch it, your partners feel it, your friends internalize it. You become the center of a ripple effect of powerlessness. But the moment you say, "This is mine to carry," even when it hurts, you reverse that current. You stop the cycle and you set a different example. So the next time something goes wrong and the voice in your head screams, "It's not my fault," let it scream, but don't follow it. Instead, whisper back, "It may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility." Then act accordingly, quietly, decisively, because that is the path of the Stoic man, and that is the beginning of becoming someone the world cannot break.
Number 4.
I deserve better. At first glance, this phrase sounds empowering. It's often said with a sense of confidence, like a man finally standing up for himself. But if you look closer, if you peel back the tone, you'll find something softer, weaker, more dangerous underneath. Entitlement, frustration, self-pity. Because the man who constantly says, "I deserve better," usually isn't building something better. He's waiting for it to arrive, and that's the problem. The Stoics never spoke in the language of deserving. They spoke in the language of doing, of becoming, of enduring. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome, never wrote that he deserved loyalty, rest, or ease. Instead, he reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That is not the voice of a man waiting for fairness. That is the voice of a man becoming fairer in response to hardship. Let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with wanting better. But there is everything wrong with believing it should come simply because you exist. When a man says, "I deserve better," what he often means is, "I want life to reward me without changing who I am." But the Stoic knows better. Nature doesn't reward desire, it responds to effort. Not once did Seneca write about fairness. He wrote about preparation, resilience, and action. "It is not that we have a short time to live," he said, "but that we waste a lot of it. And entitlement wastes life, because it turns a man into a critic of the world instead of a creator within it." Consider a man overlooked at work. He shows up, does what's asked, and still gets passed over. He tells himself, "I deserve better," and maybe he's right. But if he lives in that phrase, he rots, he waits, he gossips, he disengages. He becomes a man defined not by potential, but by resentment. The Stoic, however, takes a different path. He says, "What can I still build? Who can I still become?" He doesn't need applause to keep working. He doesn't need recognition to sharpen his character. His worth is not a demand, it's a discipline. Here's where it gets dangerous. When a man ties his self-worth to what he thinks he should be receiving, he becomes emotionally fragile. Because life does not reward virtue in predictable ways. You can act with honor and still be betrayed. You can give your best and still be overlooked if your strength is conditional, if it only survives in ideal conditions. It's not strength at all. It's approval addiction in disguise. The Stoics believed in inner currency, that your value is measured not in what you get, but in how you respond. If you demand more without becoming more, you're trying to cheat the system of nature. But if you do the work, regardless of reward, you enter the timeless arena of character. That's where the Stoic lives, not in the court of public opinion, but in the temple of inner truth. Now let's not lie to ourselves. Being unrecognized hurts. It wounds the ego. It tempts you to pull back, to match the world's neglect with your own withdrawal. But the Stoic refuses to meet darkness with bitterness. He meets it with light. He meets it with quiet consistency. Epictetus warned, "Don't expect things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do." Not to numb yourself, but to free yourself from dependence on fairness. Fairness is unpredictable. Virtue is not. And here's the truth. You will be tempted over and over to say, "I deserve better," especially when you've worked hard and received little. But don't stay there. Feel it. Then rise from it. Transform the sentence. Say, "I will become better, regardless of what the world gives me." That shift from expectation to execution is the birth of freedom. The man who walks that path can never be shaken, because he is not built on reward, he is built on responsibility. So the next time the phrase enters your mind, let it be the beginning of movement, not the end of effort. Don't stop with "I deserve better." Follow it with "so I will become better." Not louder, not more demanding, just more steady, more focused, more disciplined. That's Stoic manhood, and it builds a life that disappointment cannot erode.
Number 5.
That's not my job. There's a certain pride that hides in this phrase. A man says it with a shrug, a smirk, maybe even a sense of boundaries. "That's not my job" can feel like strength. It can sound like clarity, but often it's neither. More often than not, it's a quiet confession that a man has stopped leading, that he's narrowed his identity down to a task list, a paycheck, a title, and lost sight of the bigger mission. Because the man who only does what's required becomes replaceable. But the man who steps up, who fills gaps, takes initiative, and does the hard thing even when it isn't written in his contract, that man becomes irreplaceable. The Stoics were never concerned with job descriptions. They were concerned with duty, with service, with showing up to life completely, no matter the circumstance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that his role wasn't to complain about the weight of responsibility, it was to carry it with grace. "If it is humanly possible," he wrote, "consider it to be within your reach." That mindset changes everything. It means that instead of asking, "Is this my job?" the Stoic asks, "Is this something that needs to be done?" And that shift from assigned roles to chosen responsibility is the birthplace of greatness. Because the moment you only move when you're told to, you forfeit your freedom, you become a machine. But when you move because you see what's needed without waiting to be asked, you step into leadership, quiet leadership, Stoic leadership, the kind that earns respect not through authority, but through consistent action, not in a title, but in the invisible integrity of doing what's right even when no one is watching. Let's be honest, there are people who will exploit this. People who see your initiative as a weakness to take advantage of. People who expect you to carry their load without thanks. But the Stoic doesn't serve blindly. He draws lines where necessary. He does not become a martyr for dysfunction. What he refuses to do, however, is shrink his character to the size of his contract. He doesn't do everything, but what he does completely, fully, honorably. Because his work is not about the task, it's about who he becomes in doing it. Think about Viktor Frankl, not a soldier, not a president, just a psychiatrist imprisoned in a concentration camp. No one told him to bring hope. No one assigned him the job of helping others survive. But he chose to show up anyway, chose to serve, chose to lead. Not because it was his job, but because it was his nature. His presence became a form of resistance, a statement that no matter how inhumane the world becomes, you still get to choose who you are. That's what the Stoics believed. Your role in life is not dictated by your job. It's revealed by your response. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. And kindness, by nature, doesn't care about job titles. It doesn't care about boundaries written in ink. It asks only one thing: are you willing to be useful when it matters most?" Every moment you step in to help, not because you have to, but because you can. You are not just doing a task. You are practicing virtue. You are becoming someone trustworthy, grounded, present. But this isn't glamorous. There's no standing ovation, no badge, no bonus. Most of the time, no one notices, and that's why most men stop. They say, "Why should I do more if no one appreciates it?" But here's the Stoics' answer. Because appreciation is not the goal. Excellence is. The goal is to become a man who respects himself so deeply that he doesn't need to be rewarded for doing what's right. That's freedom. That's dignity. So the next time you're tempted to say, "That's not my job," stop and reflect. Is it really about boundaries? Or is it about fear? Fear of doing more and not being noticed? Fear of being taken advantage of? Fear of looking like a fool for caring more than others? The Stoic faces that fear and acts anyway. He does the hard, thankless work, not to be seen, but to remain in alignment with his values. Because one day the man who always waits to be told what to do will wonder why no one trusts him with more. While the man who consistently over-delivers will realize he never needed a promotion to become powerful. He just needed to take ownership when others didn't. Number 6, it is what it is. On the surface, this phrase sounds like acceptance. It sounds like peace, like the man who says it has made his peace with what he can't control. But if you listen more carefully, what you often hear beneath the surface is not peace, but passivity, defeat, a silent surrender disguised as Stoic detachment. And that's the danger of "it is what it is." Because while the words echo Stoic ideas, the mindset they often carry is far from Stoic strength. The Stoics did teach us to accept reality, but not to roll over and become numb to it. Acceptance in their philosophy was never the final step. It was the starting point. Marcus Aurelius never said, "It is what it is," and left it there. Instead, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't teach apathy, he taught action. After clarity, that's the difference. It is what it is. Without action becomes an excuse. But with action, it becomes wisdom. There's a reason this phrase has become so common. It offers a kind of temporary relief. It lets you avoid deeper emotional engagement. When something goes wrong, when life disappoints you, it's easier to shrug and say, "It is what it is," than to pause and ask, "What does this reveal about me? What can I do next?" But the Stoic doesn't stop at what is. He explores what can be. He faces what happened, yes, but then asks, "How do I respond from strength, not resignation?" Let's take a real-world example. Imagine someone loses a close relationship, a breakup, a falling out, a betrayal, the easy route. It is what it is. Close the book, walk away, but the Stoic path? That begins with acknowledgement. Yes, this happened, then examination. What did I miss? What did I tolerate? What am I still carrying that I must now release? And finally, redirection. What does this make possible that wasn't possible before? Epictetus was enslaved, yet he didn't use that fact to shrink. He accepted what was beyond his control and then devoted his life to building an unbreakable inner world. He didn't say, "It is what it is," and stop. He said, "What is within me that cannot be taken?" That shift is everything. It is the shift from being a passive observer of fate to becoming a co-creator of character. Now here's what's dangerous. It is what it is becomes a mantra of numbness if repeated too often. It becomes a shield that guards you from pain, but also from meaning. Pain, if explored, becomes purpose. But if numbed, it becomes distance. From yourself, from others, from life. The Stoic accepts the pain, studies it, absorbs the lesson, and then moves forward with more clarity than before, not to avoid life, but to engage with it more skillfully. Seneca put it best: "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." If you stop at "it is what it is," you miss the friction, you avoid the trial, and you delay the transformation. That phrase becomes a trap when it's used to end the conversation, but the Stoic uses it to begin a deeper one. Let's be even more honest. There are moments when "it is what it is" feels appropriate. After a loss, a rejection, an event truly out of your hands. In those moments, the phrase can bring momentary peace, but don't stay there. Don't live there. Because the danger of numbness is that it feels deceptively like peace. And over time, you start mistaking indifference for clarity. But the Stoic knows that real clarity requires effort. Stillness is earned. It is the result of wrestling with what you feel, not avoiding it. So the next time those words rise up, "it is what it is," don't let them be the end of your thinking. Let them be the beginning. Yes, this happened, but what does it reveal? What is the opportunity buried inside the disappointment? What kind of strength will this moment require of me? Because that's where the Stoic lives. Not in resignation, but in reinvention. Not in detachment, but in direction. He doesn't just face life, he engages it fully. And even when things don't go his way, even when the pain is deep and the loss is real, he never hides behind indifference. He rises, silently, consistently, and that is why he cannot be broken. So many men go through life repeating these phrases without ever realizing the damage they do. "That's just how I am." Real men don't talk about feelings. "It's not my fault. I deserve better. That's not my job. It is what it is." They sound normal, common, even wise. But underneath, they reveal something much darker. A man who's drifting, not growing. A man who's chosen comfort over clarity, pride over presence, blame over discipline. But here's the truth. You're not stuck. You're not broken, and you're not finished. Every phrase you outgrow is a brick removed from the wall between you and the man you're meant to become. That man doesn't speak from fear. He speaks from alignment, from reflection, from daily effort. He may not always be loud, but when he speaks, his words carry weight because they come from depth. This isn't about being perfect. It's about becoming more honest, more present, more responsible. That's the Stoic way: quiet strength, clean language, clear direction. If this video gave you something to think about, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your words are building something. Make sure it's the life you actually want to live.